Welcome back to the channel, family, and another podcast. My name is Paul. I'm a very happy member of Cocaine Anonymous. I live in Peterhead in Scotland, and I'm really grateful to have been joined today by Eve.
Hello, my name is Eve. I'm from England, and I'm a very grateful member of the C.A. Fellowship.
Once again, we're here with a personal story, and after a few short mentions, we're going to hand it over to Eve. I just want to say that we're going to be having literature on the screen from a book called Alcoholics Anonymous, which we often call the Big Book, which you can listen to or read anytime completely free at aa.org. I'm also going to have some CA readings up on the screen, and a little bit later there'll be some information about how to attend Zoom meetings and face-to-face meetings. If you're struggling with drug addiction, please stay connected. Please come along to a meeting and feel free to reach out wherever you see this podcast posted, whether it's on WhatsApp, Skype, in the rooms, or indeed here on YouTube. So without further ado, I'm just going to hand it over to you. Thank you so much, Eve.
No problem. Okay, so this is really my journey, my story, how I became to be an addict and how I found CA and how that's changed my life. So it started from quite a young age for me. My dad's family were all big drinkers. So when I was young, I always saw, people getting drunk and around alcohol and out pubs and things. I never saw any problem with it at all. I never saw any problem, with having a drink or having a cigarette or anything like that. So it's no surprise really that I started smoking when I was 12, and I, started drinking I think I was about 11, 12 at the same time. But it was like, my grandma, my granddad, my dad, my aunties and uncles, all of them, we'd all get together, family dues, or drink. And then when I was about 13 was when I first discovered cocaine. It come into the home, and my parents had split at that point. So I was living with my dad, and I've discovered it, and I'd seen my dad and his friends kind of do it, but behind the lounge door and that a couple of times at night. And I thought, oh, I'm going to give that a go. It looks dead fun. So I started taking that, and when I was at school and things, and then I didn't really realize at the time what I was doing was wrong. I didn't understand the wider consequences that was going to have on my life. But then later on, we started having deaths in my family from people drinking, from drink and drugs and things. And that kind of did open my eyes a little bit, but I still continued to drink. And then I decided that I was going to go to university. So I did actually stop doing drugs for a couple of years. I didn't stop drinking. But then I started going to university and, of course, party life. And in my third year, I managed to stay relatively sober throughout my university. I did manage to graduate with a first, so I didn't do too badly. But then, of course, I started, because I was still drinking, I started taking other drugs. So I discovered, pills, MDMA, ketamine, and started doing them instead. But I thought, well, I'm not back where I was because I'm not doing coke, because I always said, oh, I wouldn't touch that again, because, from when I was young and growing up, realizing actually I was addicted to it back then. But then everything kind of, every weekend I was going out with my friends, and of course it always led me back to cocaine because that was always my favorite and my drug of choice. So then that went from just kind of partying, and then it got through to every weekend, and then all of a sudden I was doing it during the day, and I was taking it to work with me and sneaking to the toilets on my lunch break. I wasn't getting high anymore. I wasn't getting that buzz or anything of doing it. I was just doing it to feel more normal because I couldn't function without it anymore. So that led to me becoming extremely isolated because I didn't want to admit to anyone that's what I was doing. I didn't want anyone to know. It led to a previous relationship becoming extremely toxic, because obviously I was completely and utterly in the madness. And that obviously broke up, and then I had no work friends because I didn't want to associate with people at work because they're not going to do cocaine with me then, and so I lost all my friends, and I started lying to my family about what I was doing, who I was going to see, where I was going all the time, letting them down if we'd arranged to do something and I'd be off my face. Or, on a couple of occasions we'd be at a family party and I would have a bag of coke in my bra, going to the toilets, every half an hour. And it just got so bad. I realized that I just couldn't stop that this thing had become so insidious inside of me. I couldn't let it go. And my brain was convincing me I needed to have it. I didn't want it, but I just needed it. And then my auntie passed away due to alcoholism. Her body shut down. She was being blood fed because she couldn't eat because she'd ruined her stomach through alcohol, and she passed away because of that. And I went through all of that and still couldn't stop because I couldn't see that is exactly what was going to happen to me if I didn't stop doing cocaine and drinking. So by that point, I was just becoming so utterly exhausted with my life, and I couldn't see really a way out. And then one night I was drunk and I couldn't get my hands on any cocaine, and I was so angry and so upset about it, and it was just this all-consuming like exhaustion that I just needed it. And then I found myself sat on a kitchen floor with a knife, starting to carve up my own body because I was so depressed and suicidal at the thought that I don't have any drugs in this house and I'm running out of drink. And I had this moment where I was looking down on myself and I just thought, what are you doing? This isn't a life. This is no way to live. Look at everything you've pushed away. You know, someone once said that you haven't lost anything due to addiction. You've thrown that away. And that really hit me hard because I thought, no, actually, I haven't lost anything. Everything was there for me to have. I've decided to lose this. I've thrown all of this away. I threw my friends away. I threw my family away. I almost threw my job away. And here I am on the kitchen floor at 4 o'clock in the morning, cutting myself open, bleeding everywhere, like a spoiled little child because I can't get my own way. And at that moment, I believe that's when my higher power gave me the view to open my eyes to what was going on. You know, you cannot continue, you cannot live like this. This is just not a way to, you're not even surviving because all you're doing is drinking and taking drugs every day. And I got to this point of just absolute exhaustion. I couldn't stop, but I didn't want to do it anymore either. And I think for a lot of people in that situation, you feel like suicide is the only answer for you. There's no other way out. I tried, CBT. I tried counselling to deal with the come downs, but it wasn't working, of course, because I was still poisoning myself. So after that night, I decided that something had to change. So I reached out and I spoke to my GP, who were amazing. And actually, it was my GP who put me in touch and said, you need to call Cocaine Anonymous. They're a fellowship. It's free. Attend it. Why don't you just try it out? Because there's nothing medically we can do to help you. We've already tried to help you with some CBT and things, but while you're still using, the NHS aren't really able to do anything for you. So I decided that I was going to do that. And so I phoned CA on a Tuesday. And basically, as I reach out to help, and I spoke to a lovely man on the phone, and he said that someone would contact me. Well, and then that phone call obviously ended, and I thought, well, I'm not going to hear from them again. Like, I didn't expect it. But the next morning, my phone started ringing, and I had three wonderful women call me and kind of introduce themselves and let me know that there's all these meetings online you can go to. And then another lady phoned me who is now my sponsor, and she said, we have face-to-face meetings in your city, come with me. So I called them on the Tuesday. On the Wednesday night, I went to my first Zoom meeting, and it really opened my eyes. It was really emotional to be on a meeting with all these people who were speaking to my soul. They understood what I was been through, what I was going through, but most importantly, they taught me and showed me how I can recover and how you can live a life without all of the drugs and the alcohol and the exhaustion and all the mental health issues that come with that. Because here's the proof. I'm sat on a Zoom meeting talking to them, hearing them share their stories. And then, so on the Thursday, I went to my first face-to-face meeting, and I met these wonderful people. And I just had this moment of absolute peace as I sat down in this church hall with these people who I'd never met before. And I was at home, and it was this very alien, strange feeling that I had when I was there. And then I was my now sponsor sat down with me, and she asked me the two most important questions I've ever answered in my entire life. She said, are you ready to admit that you're powerless over drugs and alcohol? And I was, yes, obviously I'm powerless. Look at what I've done to myself. I'm killing myself. And then she said, will you go to any lengths to stay sober? And that one hit me, because I always say I tried to give up. I tried to not drink. I tried to not take drugs, but really I never did try. I didn't really try not to, because I've got that thought process in my brain which is just telling me to do it, and is never happy. It's not going to be happy till you're dead. So I was like, actually, you know what? I am willing to go to any lengths to stay sober. And they were the two most important yeses I've given in my life, even to this day. It started with the help of my sponsor, and then we started going through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps. Now, one of the really helpful pieces of advice my sponsor gave to me, which even now I still use, is she said to me, sit down on your own and write down on a piece of paper. Do not type it up. I want you to handwrite this down, because it's important you connect with this. Write down how you felt on a come down. On that morning, or when you've been on it for 3 days, and your paranoia and your depression and your suicidal thoughts are coming out, how do you feel? I want you to sit down and I want you to write that out. And I write down all these like words on the piece of paper. And even now, if my brain goes, or maybe you could just have one drink today, I'll pull that out. I carry it around with me in my backpack, because it just takes you back to exactly where you don't want to be. You'd never want to go back there in the pits of absolute despair. And you see those words written out on a piece of paper, it brings it back like straight away. And I think that's a really good piece of advice for anybody who is struggling and think with those horrible intrusive thoughts of, oh, let's go have a drink. It helped me a lot. My brain has tried to push me to go back. I get feelings of that I'm inadequate, I'm not good enough. It's telling me not to speak in meetings. It's telling me not to help other people. It's telling me that I don't have a problem. But as soon as you start the steps and you start following your sponsor's advice, you can actually start to see when those triggering thoughts begin and put a stop to them. And another extremely important thing about this program is finding a higher power. Now, it's not to say it has to be God, because it doesn't. It could be your higher power. I mean, I call my higher power God, because that's an easy way to explain to people that's how I feel. I have this higher power now that I've accepted in my life. And when I was just first started going through this, I was speaking to my mom, and she gave me some amazing advice, a really good like thought-provoking sentence. She said, well, if you can blame a God for everything bad that's happened to you, and that's why you're saying you can't believe in a God, why can't you just believe in a God that wants to help you? They've told you to choose a God of your own understanding. So how about you get rid of the understanding of a religious God that you don't like the idea of, and replace that with an idea of a higher power that you want to believe in? Because if you can blame something, you can sure as hell as trust something. And that really stuck with me. And I thought, yeah, you're right, actually. Ever since I made that decision to hand my life over to a higher power every day, my life runs smoothly. I'm not full of anger and hatred and resentments. My life just flows, and it is wonderful. So as I started the steps from the sponsor, she did tell me, she says, it's a lot of work, and you need to want this. You're going to have to put your all into this. So we started all the steps. And so so we went through the steps, and then we got to the step 4, which is the inventory. And this is where you write down your resentments and your kind of defects. So you go through this process of like purging yourself, of writing down people who hurt you, people you've hurt, writing down like what happened in that situation, but also not to looking to blame anyone. You also need to look within. You need to look at yourself and say, how did I contribute to that situation? And that's where you find your defects. And that's when you can move on the steps, and you can ask your higher power to remove them. Because you can as soon as you identify your defects, like my personal own defect was just absolute awful intolerance and self-centeredness. I was just so I was so all about myself, and I was so intolerant towards anyone else's opinions, ideas. I wouldn't listen to people. But now I know that I've been able to change my entire perception of things and my entire attitude, because I know that's what I am like. So I ask my higher power in the morning, oh, let me be nice today. Let me think about other people today. And then of course, once you've been through going through the step 4 and making that, then you start to talk about making amends. How can I make amends to the people that I've stomped all over? You know, how can I show these people that I've hurt so much and I've betrayed for years, who just all they wanted to do was love me unconditionally, and I threw that away. So then you go through with your sponsor how to make amends. If you know, how are you going to prove to them that you are making this change about yourself? And I found that extremely comforting, because I found that when I went to make amends and apologize to those that I'd hurt, and talk about them, you know, talk about what I'd gone through and things, they all of a sudden, because a lot of these people didn't really realize how bad my problem was. I never spoke to my family about my issue. They knew I liked drugs, but it was kind of ignored. They knew I liked drinking, but no one understood the extent to which I was going to you know, to use all the time. And now I'm fixing those relationships. And when you'll be, I mean, I was surprised that when I spoke to friends and family, admitted I have a problem, but also told them why I was coming to them to try and make these amends, you know, they they were proud. And it shocked me. It made me really tearful, because all of a sudden I had these people I thought hated me were so proud of me, and the support that I've had because I've made that step to admit it has really just again, that changed my life as well, because now I have a support network. And as you go through as well, as you get towards the end of the steps, you start to learn to take an inventory. So every night before I go to bed, I like to sit down and you ask yourself a set of questions. You know, the biggest one for me is, were you resentful today? Were you afraid today? Have you kept something to yourself that you need to share with somebody else? And they're really important, because if something happens in your day and you get, you know, you're sniggled by it and you're resentful about something, or you're really annoyed at something, if you take that into the next day, and then into the next day, and then into the next day, that's going to turn a molehill into a massive mountain. And that's when people, well, I know for me, I know that if I did that and I started holding on to things again, I'd be drinking again. So I like to, every night I do my inventory, I review my day. You know, was I kind towards everybody? And I love the question as well. We have a question that says, what did you pack into the stream of life? And there I can make a list of all the things that I've done today. And every day before I go to bed, I have a big smile on my face, because I see that every day that I do my inventory and I look back on what I've done that day, I'm a productive member of society. I'm working hard at my job. I'm working hard at maintaining my relationships. I'm working hard at my sobriety every day, you know, and that makes you feel better about yourself. If you compare yourself to where you would have been months ago, and you look at this list of these things you've done, and you're like, even if it's just something silly like I made dinner today, for me, that's a big achievement some days. If I'm having a bad day, you know, and I don't want to eat, I made dinner today. I had a shower today. I washed and I brushed my teeth today. And you think, well, I didn't do that when I was in the madness, because I wouldn't have I didn't care about myself enough to do that. And these little small victories really, really build up, and you start feeling so much better. And the honesty that you gain as well from being in this program, because honesty is such a big thing, because as soon as you go back to little white lies or anything else as well, that's when it, for me, if I started that, I would go back to drinking again, because one little white lie turns into another, until all of a sudden you're like, your addict brain will just go back, and mine would say, oh, we'll just have a drink and just don't tell your sponsor. And before you know it, I'd be back out there using and drinking and thinking that I can keep it a secret from people, which is rubbish, really. So you need to keep yourself honest. But I've also found, because of doing my step 4 and knowing my defects and things, I understand how I can talk to people better. And because I've made my amends, they're willing to listen to me. So if I've done, you know, if I feel like I've done something wrong or something, I can go to my mum and say, oh, mum, I've done this, or oh, mum, this has happened. But rather than her just being like, well, it's because of the drugs, she knows it's not, but she'll listen to me because I've already spoken to her about things. And it just makes your life better, not having to remember your lies. I don't know how I used to do it, because there were so many lies in my life. People didn't believe you, anything that come out of my mouth. I'd be sat there in a conversation with one of my friends, and they'd just be looking at me, shaking their head, because wouldn't believe anything. But now they know I'm being honest and open. And the step 11 prayer, when we in the evening, I lie in my bed, I've done my inventory, and then I'm getting prepared to go to sleep. And so I do my prayer and my meditation. I feel more connected to my high power as well, because I can say at the end of the day, thank you for getting me through another day, and thank you for being there to have my back today. And then I'll hand over my resentments and things like, well, this happened today that annoyed me. Can you take that from me? Do you know what? I'm going to give this to you, because this doesn't need to live in my head. And that really works, because it cleanses me in the evening. And then tomorrow is a new day. It's a brand new day for me. Tomorrow I get up, and anything that I've done not so good today, I'm going to work on tomorrow. And I can live and sleep happy in the knowledge that I can do better now, because I've got the support from my family, from my higher power, from the fellowship, and I can be better. I try and do take it 24 hours at a time now, because it's too overwhelming to think, you're not going to drink or use for the rest of your life. And sometimes that used to drag me down a bit, because I'm like, oh my God, I've got to change everything about myself. And I mean, yes, I do have to, but I can do that in a 24-hour block. And that's fine, because if I live day to day, I'm not, my brain isn't going, what, hypothetical situations, what's going to happen in 10 years, what's going to happen to your job next week and things. So I'm not like thinking and making up scenarios in my head in which to worry myself. I'm just like, no, we'll just get through today. What I need to do today, I'll do today. I'll worry about that tomorrow, because that's a tomorrow problem. Or what happened yesterday, and I can't do anything about that because it's done. And this program's taught me how to live like that, and how to let go of things, and how to make myself better for the next day. Everything now is much clearer and easier to handle as well, because I've resigned myself. You can't control people, places, and things. And that's just a fact. You can't, but I can control the way I react to people, places, and things. And I can control my attitude and perceptions of that. So that's what I do now. I don't worry about Joe Bloggs walking down the street if he looks at me funny. I don't worry about someone if I'm at a concert and they push past me and they shove me. I can't control their behavior, but I can control mine, rather than going over there and trying to start a fight, or pushing them back, or, making a snarky comment. I can just go, well, that's your problem, because I'm not making it my problem. I don't need that problem. We all have enough of our own without taking on other people's. And I've noticed that I've got more self-control of myself, and I can be less self-centered, because I can think about other people. In this fellowship, I call fellows every day, and I call my sponsor every day. And it gets you out of your own head. So rather than sitting here thinking about yourself and what you need, yourself and what you want, pick up the phone, call somebody else, have a lovely conversation, and say, how was your day? And I love it, because not only do I like to hear about someone else's day, it gets me stopping my thoughts from escalating and going crazy. I genuinely care about these people. You build friendships in this fellowship that will last a lifetime. They really do, because the people, they just want what's best for you, and you'll find you're not going to get on with everybody. That's impossible. I mean, there are some people that I don't really speak to because we don't gel, but you will seriously find people that you can really be friends with, and they will help you. And then the other prayer that I really enjoy is Serenity Prayer. It's my mantra. Now, it reminds me to be calm. It reminds me to be courageous, and it reminds me to try and be wise about decisions. And that prayer saves my life, but it also saves me at work a lot. If I get thrown into a situation and I start to panic, or someone annoys me, I just take myself away, or just sit calmly for a minute, and I'll say, can I have a couple of minutes? And I'll just take a step back, because now I'm not on drugs and drinking. I don't react all the time to everything. I don't have to react to anything anymore. If I choose not to, if I just say to my higher power, you can have this. I'm going to hand this to you as well. You can take this weight off my shoulders. And it works. My higher power does that for me. because they want me to be better. So, you know, I'm now reinvented myself with the help of these 12 steps. These 12 steps have taught me how to live a life without fear and drugs and alcohol. You know, I have hope, faith, and courage. I really do now because of this. And then if you can help others when you give yourself to this program, it helps me by helping others, because I'm self-centered. So if I've got somebody else to take care of, I'm not in myself. I'm not thinking about me. I'm thinking about them. What can I do to help them? What can I do to give them what I've got? Because we want to share it. And then, you know, with the triangle, you have the unity, service, and recovery, and they all go hand in hand. And if you stick to those three things, you use your 12 steps every day, because they're applicable to every day in any situation that you could be in. They really are. They basically teach you how to live a life and not just survive on drugs. So, I mean, one of my favorite readings of all the meetings within CA is the reaching out. You know, I made it into this program because someone else used their 12th step on me. I should never, ever forget that fact. You know, because when after you've been through your 12 steps, you then go through and you then take on a sponsee. And I will never forget that my sponsor, rather than just either, you know, they recovered, but rather than them just recovering and going, well, I'm fine now, I'm good, see you later, reached out and wanted to help others. I am sat here clean and sober because they reached out their hand to me and said, I will help you up. And they saved my life. This program and this fellowship has absolutely saved my life. I don't know what I would have done without it, because now I am a whole person, whereas before I was just a shadow of a person. I didn't have a personality. I didn't know who I was or what I liked to do. And now I have this amazing life to look forward to, and things are starting to fall into place for me that I never thought possible. And I've learned that I am strong, and I've learned that I am worth more than that. Worth more than taking drugs and alcohol. There is so much more out there for me than that. And with this program, it helps you to realize your potential, but it helps you to apply your potential as well. You know, my high power and this program is pulling me all into a whole person again. And I'm not just existing anymore. I am really living, and I'm really enjoying my life. And I do implore, if there is anybody who is unsure about the CA or the fellowship, who's listening to this, please reach out to us, because I promise you there is a better life for you. And we will help you, and we will do whatever is in our power to try and help. And if you can find a higher power, you'll learn true unconditional love. And that's the end of my share really at the moment. So I'll hand you back to Paul.
Thank you so much, Eve. That was excellent. Thank you so much. What an encouragement, what a message of strength and hope and victory, you know, over alcoholism and addiction. Wonderful. And, you know, I've been privileged to be a tiny part of your journey for a little while now, and hearing you share the clarity and the serenity, you know. And, you know, I think the great power of the meetings is identification in the problem and identification in the solution, you know, and the solution is various and yet the same for all of us. You know, prayer, meditation, home group, face-to-face and online home group, minimum of 2 substantial conversations around recovery every day, consistent step work, commitment to reading through our recovery literature, commitment to our own personal spiritual literature, good self-care, and helping others, you know, getting involved in service and doing precisely what you're doing tonight here, you know, giving your time to carry a message of hope to others. And everyone that has done those things that I've ever seen has stayed consistently clean. They have, you know. And, you know, it's a wonderful thing to hear freshness and the joy in the message, of freedom. And I'm just really thankful. And to see the transformation over a period of time is one of the privileges of sticking around. And whilst you was talking now, I've got this up on the screen, as you can see, about losing the power of choice. When it's widely agreed that whilst we're locked in a cycle of addiction where we're getting in a mood altered state, and if we're not in that mood altered state, we're finding ways and means and occasions to get in that mood altered state. And then once you're in that state, you don't care too much about all the consequences because you're in an altered condition. And then when we come down, all the problems and consequences are there. They rarely improve. It's like whack-a-mole. We're gradually trying to address consequences so we can carry on getting high, getting drunk, and sooner or later, I call it a conspiracy of consequences. Things happen. Mental problems, physical, financial, criminal, marital, and industrial. All kinds of things conspire together to give us the impetus for change. And I call it some of the mysteries of recovery. We can't always precisely say quite why. Well, why didn't I have the desire to get clean 6 months before? Why not a year before? Well, treasure the questions, because we don't always get the answers in life or in recovery for that matter. But either way around, when we're locked in that cycle of living to use and using to live, we're very much, in a powerless state. However, once clean, when I chose to pick up again, which I'm thankful, it was quite a few 24s ago now, I chose to use again. You make no mistake about it, I chose to use again. And I have to own that. It's an honest program. And it says in step 1, we were powerless, and it says here, this paragraph that's in italics here, our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. So, as I say, I chose to use again. And even after the first one, I still had some choice. But after the second, third, or fourth, it was practically non-existent, and this next bit, unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. When I'd chosen to use, nothing else mattered. I wasn't thinking of consequences. I was just thinking of getting in an altered state. So it's quite an awful thing to look at the realities of active addiction and the delusion, the bedevilment and the confusion of a baffled state. But anyway, wonderful share. And, I'm really pleased you've come along to share with us tonight. And, what happens is we go through the process with someone who knows what they're talking about, like what you've done. And we find ourselves a good home group online and good home group face-to-face where the message is carried. And we find a group that's fully self-supporting with one primary purpose, that's welcoming to all, that's a healthy atmosphere, and we hear a solid message of hope. And then when we learn about our own alcoholism, we learn about recovery, we then have a mental defense, because we're transparent about our consequences. And it talks about that in the next paragraph. So it's a wonderful bit of the book, and this is, of course, there is a solution. So, in general terms, how is it today? How did the change? Was the change gradual, or did you find that within a week or two of abstinence, you was beginning to have that vital spiritual experience, or was it more gradually?
Mine was quite quickly, because in the book it says, sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly. Mine was quick. But I believe that, you see, I'd already had a moment that I now kind of understand as my higher power on that kitchen floor, where I was willing to try and kill myself. And I had that moment of this clarity, what are you doing? And so when I started doing the steps, there was something inside of me that I can only explain by a higher power that was there already taking this away from me. it only took me maybe 2 weeks, I found, for me to have that desire and compulsion to stop using gone. And since that is, I mean, most of the time, I have had weak moments, but my brain hasn't gone directly to go have a drink. It's gone, call your sponsor, get on a meeting. So I already found that my way of thinking, I'd kind of broken that cycle, thankfully, because I had a day where the weather was really the first lovely day of the year, really nice weather, loads of people out drinking, and I'm like, I really want to go and get a bottle of wine. And I put my coat and my shoes on, and then I stopped myself and I thought, you don't want to be doing this. Something stopped me. You don't want to be doing this. So what did I do? I went onto a Zoom meeting, because thankfully there were Zoom meetings. Gratefully, I got of my home group that's on 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I managed to speak to people in that group, and my sponsor said, right, let's get you out. She picked me up, took me out for a walk with the dog. Gone, desire gone. By the time I got back home again, I was back to being calm. And that's the joy of this program, though, because you learn to have that. It says in the book, we are without defense against the first drink. But that's why I can't put that first drink in me. My defense now is my higher power and this fellowship and my steps. You ask for help, you'll get it. So
Precisely.
yeah, I'm very lucky, I believe, that I managed to click with this very quickly.
Excellent. And, it says there halfway down the page, we found much of heaven and been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence, which we'd not even dreamed. And it's crystal clear, that's been your experience. It is a complete transformation that's on offer in Cocaine Anonymous. We've had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude towards life, towards our fellows, and towards God's universe. The central fact to our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He's commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. There's no middle of the road solution. And it mentions there's an asterisk, and it's to Appendix 2, which is page 567. So I'd commend that to any of our listeners, page 567, spiritual experience. And it talks about the entire psychic change and how it can be gradual. And some persons have a dramatic experience, not dissimilar to the one you've just described. Other persons, it's very educational and progressive. But either way around, it's an emotional rearrangement. It's an internal change. That external unmanageability for me was a manifestation of internal unmanageability.
Yeah.
It was the manifestation of an internal condition. And with purpose, connection, expression, and all the suggestions, and staying connected and in the middle of the boat, and listening to persons like yourself that are clean and sober and reasonably manageable and content, you're strengthened in abstinence and sobriety, and there's a sense of assurance and comfort, isn't there, that you're on the right path. And it's just such a blessing. I think that's the power of the fellowship. I think the great thing about CA, is that it's real, and the folk in it, as you've intimated, a lot of them are available outside the meeting for support. So it's not just like, how could I describe it? Like it's just in the meetings that everyone's rah, rah, rah. Folks are actually available outside of the meetings, and that's a very powerful thing, I think. What do you think?
I can say that when I've had my weak moments, I've never not been able to get hold of someone. There is always somebody at the end of a call or a message, and all I'd have to say is, I'm feeling a bit rubbish. Is there anyone who could just chat to me? Because I like chatting to the people in the fellowship, because they understand where my brain's going. Whereas if I say to my mom, I feel a bit rubbish today, she'll go, pull socks up. She's never been an addict, never going to be an addict. She doesn't understand where my brain can go. But the friends that I've made in CA know exactly, they click. As soon as you phone them, I'm feeling a little bit rubbish today. Right. And then we'll talk about the most random things instead. It's, we've seen this on TV today, or, we'll start singing songs at each other or something, I'll give you an earworm. And we'll just have a laugh. But it's the unity that is within CA is like nothing I've ever experienced before, and it's absolutely beautiful to see.
and I don't know about your using. I know you mentioned briefly, but for many of us, we start off and the music's playing, our partners are there, the money's flowing, we've still got the car and the job and friends, we've still got our minds and our health and our youth. But the reality for many of us, we end up in a room with the doors locked, the curtains drawn, worried about every sound, wondering if it's the cops or, will we get more stuff? And we end up, in a terrible mental, physical, emotional state. Now, the disease of addiction can be arrested at any point and recovery is possible. It's possible to experience that transformation. So anyone listening to this, weekend binge drinkers and users can get clean, or someone living out of a pipe and a spoon or the foil half a dozen times a day can also get and stay clean here. We have a solution that works for anybody. And so it is a long period of reconstruction for some folk. Others fare better. Everyone's different. And, I really believe the more you put in, the more you get out. It's like a bank account. You can only withdraw what you've deposited. And the mystery of things is committing yourself to God and asking for that wisdom and that courage and that serenity, which is what we do, of course, at the end of every meeting. So slowly but surely, we become wiser and more courageous and serene. And courage is not the absence of fear necessarily, but it's doing it anyway, And these simple suggestions that you and I have outlined work for everyone. The knowledge is there. We've got podcasts on this channel: Spiritual Malady, the ABCs of Addiction, and the entire psychic change. We've got 14 podcasts on the 12 steps. We've got 2 on step 1, 2 on step 2. We're on to Tradition 8. We're doing a series on the entire set of traditions. We've just recorded Tradition 8 this morning. And there's about 14 personal stories. So my message to anyone that's listening to this is stay connected, come along to a meeting, and take the suggestions, and you can have a happier future. The literature, prayer, and the fellowship work very well. So do you see yourself sponsoring at some point, Eva? Is that something you've not thought about, or are you sponsoring currently?
I'm not sponsoring currently, but I am going to start to be putting my name forward because I have finished the steps. I've also read some additional literature. So I've read Drop the Rock and Drop the Rock Ripple Effect and things as well. And now I am in a place where I'm ready to start helping others like I've been helped. And I think it's only right and fair that you give back once you've been through the steps, because I now need a sponsee to make sure I don't get complacent and I don't go back, because that's so important. Because you think, oh well, there's no cure. It's not a cure, it's a recovery program. But thanks to this Alcoholics Anonymous, this book I've got, I now have a guide for the rest of my life in which to live by, which ensures I will never pick up another drink or another drug. And I've got to tell you, that feeling is something pretty amazing. And it's
Yes, quite absolutely. And that's part of the transformation. We're careful in what we say, but I have recovered. I can only speak for myself. I have recovered. I honestly can't tell you how many years it's been since I've any thought of consuming mood altering substances other than chocolate and coffee and cream cakes. But I mean, that's the transformation. I have recovered. It doesn't mean I'm perfect, but I have recovered. The drugs are not the issue. And many of us come for our drinking and we stay for our thinking. It's quite possible to be physically sober but have drunken thinking, drunken speaking, and drunken behavior. That's the deeper truth. There's a lot of folk out there that are physically sober but mentally, emotionally, and physically drunken.
Well, when I said cure, just to clarify, this isn't a program that you can take and go, right, I'm cured, I can go back out and have 1 or 2 drinks now. It's not going to be that way. So you can't come into the program thinking this is going to teach me how to drink and use responsibly. What it's going to do is teach you that you don't need that anymore. You can live a perfectly happy, fulfilled life without it.
It's quite. And I think you'd be great at taking someone through the 12 steps. And I, I mean, the transformation is marvelous, and to hear, someone get off the train wreck, before the crash, and to have that period of reconstruction happen rather quickly, and I have seen it happen. Some persons rebuild their life much quicker. They really do. And I think it's all about good sponsorship and clear-cut direction, and you've definitely had that and took the good of it, and you've got solid face-to-face meetings and online meetings, and it's all there for us, isn't it? It's a wonderful thing, staying clean.
Yeah. All you need to do is engage and just give it a go. Do your sponsor suggests to you, go to meetings, connect with fellows, have that unity with you, and it works.
Yes. What's your favorite part of the big book?
I love, I'm sorry, I've got it bookmarked. I'm just going to grab my favorite bit. I think it is into action. Let me just click through. I think my favorite line in the book at the moment is faith without work is dead. Because that speaks to me, like, because I've gone through my steps and things now. Faith without works is dead, right? You've done yours, you're better. It's time for you to get up and go out, and you need to help others. And I love every time I kind of read through it, it kind of gives me chills, because we alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. Everything is in here for you to outline, and this part of the book reminds you of that, and reminds you, right, get up, put your socks on, put your shoes on. There are other people out there who need help. It's our time to help them. This program helped me. I am part of this program. I'm going to help others. And I think it just reminds you that you don't just go through the steps and leave it there. You go through the steps, and then you are part of something so much bigger than yourself, if that makes sense.
Yes. Oh, absolutely, it does. Absolutely. And I think the thing is to be vigilant. To remain vigilant is the great thing, throughout the day. Recovery becomes, you're clean, the obsession has been removed. So then what are you going to do now? And the answer is try and help others every day. And to be vigilant around the thought life. And we're coming towards the end of the podcast now, but I just want to give a shout out to the importance of a healthy support network. As you can see, my tablet's decided to freeze up. It's nearly as old as me. But I mean, having a support network means that if my speech starts to go off, it'll be pointed out to me, or I'll be made aware of it. And that's a sign the thought life has gone off. And that at that point, it can be arrested, and you can take action, as you mentioned, with inventory and sharing with others. But when persons don't have a support network and they don't engage in discussions about recovery regularly, that sort of early warning system is not there. They're just sort of, how can I describe it? They don't have that sort of sounding board, if you like. And so, they're unaware that they're slipping. And I think it's a very powerful thing to maintain connection with folks.
Like
so you've got like a barometer. Go ahead.
But with honesty, we were speaking about honesty earlier, but you need to be honest with yourself, but with other people. I mean, I've been having a conversation with fellows before, and something's come out of my mouth that hasn't been, it's not been horrendous, but it's not been particularly pleasant. And I haven't even thought about what I've said. I've just said something, again, because, or some of my defects, I'm not perfect. This program doesn't make me pure, pristine, perfect person. But they have the ability to call me out on that as well. I mean, it not in a nasty way either. They've just said, think about what you've just said. But rather than having a go at me about something I said, it was, think about what you've just said. And it made me think, and I thought, you're right. And then, but now I'm starting to learn to think before I speak more so now, because sometimes when you're, especially if you get into a situation or you're talking about something you're very passionate about, my old kind of self-centeredness starts to be drip fed back in, and you need to pull yourself back. But the honesty in this program, because people can be honest with me as well, that it's kind of like almost constructive criticism in a way. Well, why don't you try and word it like this, or why don't you try and think about it from this point of view? And that's so important to me, because without that feedback, probably would still be, just talking and offending people.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, when you're working with others, it keeps you on your toes.
Mm-hmm.
We have a member that says that he's not his sponsor's answer man, but the reality is that they do expect you to know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what about this? What about that?
Mm-hmm.
And it really keeps you close to your higher power, and keeps you close to God and faith, and it really is a wonderful thing. And then over a period of time, to see them get well and then work with others, it's a real blessing.
Yeah.
So look, it's completely frozen on me, the tablet, as you can see. So nothing I do seems to have any effect. What I will say is, there's lots and lots of meetings, folks. So please feel free to comment underneath wherever you see this broadcast posted, and we'll reach out to you. Please come along to some meetings. If you go to ca.org, you can get lots of leaflets there, lots of information, and there's a link to a website where there's some meetings, online meetings. It gives you the login number. Most of them are on Zoom nowadays. You can also go to cocaineanonymous.org.uk. That's cocaineanonymous, one word, .org.uk. And there's a whole host of face-to-face meetings on there, and there's a whole host of online meetings, or rather information how you can get to them. And also at aa.org, you can read or listen to the big book, which is what we've got on the screen here, or the 12 steps and 12 traditions. So without further ado, thank you so much for your time, Eve. That's been marvelous.
Thank you for letting me share my story and being a part of this fellowship. It saved my life. And if anyone out there wants to ask some questions, or wants to just, find out more about us, please visit the websites and please reach out to us, because we are here to help you, and we will help you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Until next time, family, stay strong, stay safe, and stay connected. Once again, thanks, Eve. Bye-bye.